Hello, my name is Melvin Marsh, and I'm here to discuss the most recent disease that's probably been on the news probably more than any other story, certainly in recent memory for myself. COVID-19. It's come from there are lots of different names for it. The coronavirus disease, that's another one. Um, and I was asked by Dr. Pickens over at Eagle Academy if I could do a little talk to help, students understand a little bit more about this disease and how to help prevent the spread of it. A little bit about me. I am an EMT, so I am on the front lines of part of this. I also am a volunteer for the Georgia Department of Public Health. I'm a member of the Medical Reserve Corps, and I'm also part of Team Rubicon, which has been asking of volunteers to go into hot spots to help contain the spread. I will probably be deploying, in just a few weeks. I wanted to finish out this semester, as well as take care of my family member who currently has it, and try to avoid having it myself. But I wanted to at least get this out, so hopefully it will be helpful to whoever may watch this. So what is it? It is a brand new, newly discovered member of the coronavirus family. Until December 2019, nobody knew about this virus. They actually think it might have actually come into I keep saying U.S. It's not the U.S. Coming into the human population sometime, possibly, in November. The reason that it's called COVID-19, the 19 actually means it was discovered in 2019. This coronavirus family is not a new family. It is a very well-known family, but this is a brand new member of that family. You probably have had many coronaviruses before, including the common cold. All 200 roughly viruses that cause the common cold are basically members of this family. I should say more mild members of this family. Most members of this family are pretty dangerous and can cause lots of problems breathing, and this is another one of those more dangerous members. Now, prior to it being in humans, there is a lot of suspicion that it came in through the bat population because they do have a virus that is quite similar to what we have been calling COVID-19, which is also called SARS-CoV-2. I don't think I've ever heard anybody call it that outside of the medical literature, but if you use any of these terms, people will understand what you're talking about. But there is a virus in the bat population that is very similar. What most likely happened is that there are certain places in this world that bats are part of the food source, a food source. It most likely came in through that way. We're not 100% sure, but that is the current hypothesis. And once it got into the human body, it started to change in a way that it meant that it could get us sick and could be spread person to person. I am so sorry if I'm mispronouncing this one, but it originally came from Wuhan, China, late 2019. The first case was in December. Though, again, as I mentioned, it may have actually popped in November, but you're going to mostly hear December be mentioned. It very quickly went through the city, and then from there went to other parts of China, other parts of Asia, eventually went to Italy, and from there it just has pretty much exploded and gone throughout the entire world. Sometimes you might hear this called a pandemic, which A pandemic means that it has spread to a certain amount of geographic areas. Usually, just a few countries can, or a few areas, a few cities could potentially even be called a pandemic, depending on how you want to discuss it. But other great pandemics you're talking about, like something called the Black Death. That was a big pandemic. The Spanish flu, which spread throughout the world in the early 20th century, that's also a pandemic, and this is as well. So I'm actually recording this on the 29th of March. I put in yesterday's data. I'm sure the numbers have gone up from then. Now, there are only 195 countries in the world, or something like that. But the numbers I was given also included territories, which aren't quite countries as well. And from that, 199. That is most. I mean, that's most of the world. Cases total. I have the numbers of cases total. Over almost 658,000. A lot of which are still active. Almost 500,000 are still active cases, most of which, thank heavens, are mild. However, it's that the numbers that are very severe or critical, these are the guys who are going to be hospitalized. That's still representing 5% of the cases. Of the cases that are no longer active, that means that this person has either recovered from the virus or has passed away. That's, if you look at the amount of people who have passed away, it's about an 18% death rate. But this is from people who have passed away. Things are getting better as we are catching them earlier, attempting to keep people alive. But it is important to note that we have some pretty scary numbers out there. But it is going to get better. Hopefully it is going to get better. It's just a matter of time, really. So some people have been calling this some things that are not appropriate. It's not called the COVID-19. If you want to know what an actual corvid is, do you see that bird right over there? It's a type of crow. Unfortunately, in the media, it's also called, by certain people, the Chinese flu, which is kind of cruel and highly unnecessary. And that can, a lot of people who are from China or from Asia have been getting a lot of threats because that term is working up some fear. And so that is really an inappropriate term. If you do hear somebody calling it the Chinese flu or whatnot, and you can try to correct them, that would be really appreciated. And nobody really likes having hurtful things said to them. So there are a lot of symptoms, potential symptoms for COVID-19. But because there are so many, I just picked the 5 most common. I did grab this from, I don't remember where I grabbed this. I think I grabbed it from the World Health Organization. But these are the 5 big ones to start keeping an eye out for. The first one is a fever. Now, 98.6 is what you are normally somewhere around. And if the fever is getting over 100, 100.4, that's when we're starting to really make note. It's not unheard of for people to get into the 99s just on a regular day. But 100 or higher, that's when we're taking note of people. Another very one is a dry cough. That's a pretty normal cough. Of course, I'm probably going to cough because I said cough. Okay, now that's out of my system. Another one is tiredness and fatigue. I know a lot of the students at Eagle Academy, well, you're all college students. You probably are tired on a regular basis. Certainly I am as a graduate student. But it's something important to keep an eye on and make note of. You'll also see another type of cough on here that I put in quotes called productive. What that means, because most people I know don't know medical jargon, but I did feel it was important to put on there because that's what it's now listed as, on all the various sites when you do research. But a productive, quote unquote, cough means that something is coming up, like the mucus, that icky crap that you cough up. That actually was what they mean by when they said productive cough. So if something like that happens, make a note of that as well. Some people have been giving false information saying that if you're getting a productive cough like that crap coming up, that you can't have COVID. It is in fact a very common one. Approximately 33% of people have a cough like that. Now the biggest symptom that's usually the most troubling is shortness of breath. That's trouble breathing, not being able to get a full breath, anything like that, or potentially even pain when you're trying to breathe. I don't know how many people have asthma, but I have a friend who has asthma and who has COVID-19, and a mild case, thank heavens, and she's actually saying that it reminds her a little bit of an asthma attack. But anytime you are having difficulties breathing, please make a note of that. Talk to your parents, talk to a doctor, talk to somebody, because that is a particularly important symptom. Now the thing is that despite the fact that we know that there are symptoms out there, you can have these symptoms and you might not have this disorder. You can have, you could have an allergy, you could have a cold, you could have a flu, you could have who knows what you have. You also might not be sick at all. This is what is called, we call it asymptomatic. That means you don't have any symptoms. You don't have a fever. You don't have a cough. You don't have anything else. But just the fact that you do or don't have that doesn't mean that you might not be carrying it and giving it to somebody else. It's also possible that you got a different virus in you. Whether that's an simple allergy. The pollen has been getting to me. I spend half my time thinking I have COVID-19 because of the symptoms coming from my hay fever. But I also know that it is most likely just that. But I am still keeping an eye out. If you do if you do think you might have a cold or flu, check. So you can certainly contact a parent, contact a healthcare worker, and see if they can't help you figure out if it's possible COVID-19 or not. So the question is how are you going to know if you have it? And unfortunately, the only way you can find out is if you do a laboratory test. And unfortunately, also, there is a complete and utter shortage of tests out there. And most people, even people who are on the front lines like I am, and who are showing signs like I am, are getting denied access. And a friend of mine, who's a rabbi in Atlanta, his son's a doctor in Atlanta, feverish, shortness of breath, everything, and even he couldn't get access to a test to be checked because they're in that much of a shortage. Basically, it's not the most particularly comfortable test out there anyway. I would have shown a photo, but I didn't want to traumatize anybody. But let's just say they take a special swab and really put it up your nose. Not just a little bit up your nose, but like way, way, way up your nose. To the point that I don't even want to know how big the swab is because the images I'm seeing, it's like, I don't want that anywhere near me. And it looks very, very uncomfortable. So, that being said, I didn't want to traumatize anybody else. Now, the benefit here is that most people really don't need to be 100% sure that they have COVID-19. The average person is going to have a super, super mild situation. Something like, like a glorified cold. And if you are super mild or you don't have any signs at all, well, treat it like a cold or a flu. Just and eat well. Should say eat healthy if you can. Take rest. Take a med to help with the symptoms. Sleep. You do whatever you need to do. But that's going to help a fair amount of people. And if things do get worse, that's when people are going to need to seek further assistance. Since most people are going to be fairly safe, it's going to be fairly mild, there are bad possibilities as well. In a really bad case, you might have ever heard of the term pneumonia. And that means that basically there's fluid in the lungs. And that means that it's really hard to catch your breath and get that air that your body needs to survive. I don't want to say it's almost like drowning, basically internally, but it kind of is. So that's basically what pneumonia is. It's basically fluid in your lungs, or otherwise not being able to have a transfer. Usually is because of fluid. What that can also lead to is what doctors would call respiratory failure. What that means is that you stop breathing. And if you can't breathe, that could be a problem. Or that is one of the possibilities. I don't like how this thing got itself set up, but respiratory failure is that possibility. Another possibility is that you will go into a type of shock. It's called septic shock, and in that case, it's usually a bacteria in a bloodstream that leads to low blood pressure. That's what it usually is. It still can be for this, even though it's a viral disorder, because there's a bunch of bacteria all over your body. That's usually good, and throwing your immune system down can let the other bad stuff come in and take over, or it can even make the good stuff get worse. It can get a little weird, but it can lead. But this type of shock leads to low blood pressure, which means that your body still can't get the oxygen that it needs. And that means it basically tries to put all of the oxygen to your brain, because that's really, really important. But sometimes there gets to the point where it's just too much. Septic shock is very, very dangerous and can lead to death, unfortunately. Now, as I mentioned about this, most people are going to have mild cases. And this information here came from the World Health Organization, from a paper they put out a few weeks ago. 80% is that, no symptoms to cases with pneumonia, which seems really weird for me to say that is a mild to moderate situation, because normally pneumonia is considered very serious. But given the rest of the options for this disease, it's mild. That still feels very strange to say that. A fair amount of people are getting severe disease. They're having problems breathing. They might be breathing very, very quickly. I put down that it's 30 breaths a minute, 30 plus breaths a minute. To put that into a context, normally people are running somewhere between 12 and 20. It's normal. The most common thing put down is probably 16, to be honest with you. So somebody who has a more severe disease, might have a blood oxygen level below 93%. Normally, we're looking for 98%, 99%. Occasionally, we'll see 100. It's pretty rare, but we do see 100 people. That's how much oxygen is in your blood that your blood can hold. So if your blood is only holding, like, say 90% of the oxygen it could, that can be a problem. Usually, if we're under about, say, 95%, usually a lot of you have probably seen somebody who has had a little oxygen tank. It's very similar to if you go scuba diving. It's giving you extra oxygen. In this case, or have the things in their nose, the nasal cannula. That's what the things that go up your nose are called. Those are helping to deliver additional oxygen. So according to the WHO, almost 14% are probably going to need extra help just because of that. The scariest situation is that 6% that are in the critical section. They can stop breathing. They're the dangerous, they're the ones with the low blood pressure. And if they're not careful, they may have organ failure and pass away. If you have been watching to maybe your parents or something else have been saying, or been listening to the news talking about these things called ventilators and these things called, ICUs. I don't know how many of you have ever seen one. I don't know what your knowledge base is. That stands for intensive care unit. Doctors are there all the time trying to help people who might not make it. It's a very, very serious place in the hospital, one of the most serious places in the hospital. And we're running out of beds, which is what everybody is scared of. That's what has been happening in Italy. And the ventilators that people are talking about are helping people breathe. And they're also, of course, getting additional oxygen because, well, they're almost always getting additional oxygen with that mechanical breathing. But they're scared that people are terrified that we're not going to be able to get help doing that. So I don't want to scare anybody, but that's really, I wanted to make sure people understood that. Because that ventilator is that thing that's helping them breathe. And that's what there's a shortage of right now. Or we're rapidly running towards that spot. Now, unfortunately, right now, there's no vaccine for it. That's the shots. People say, get your flu shot, get this, that, or the other. The vaccine is that thing that is teaching your body to recognize that so that the next time it sees it, it can mount a defense quicker and you won't get sick. There are people and countries out there that are working on that vaccine. Israel right now is moving on to the next level of clinical trials for them, for themselves, and if it works, I'm sure we're probably all going to get help from them. Right now, there's not much in the way of medications you can take to make it go faster. Potentially, you can eliminate some of the symptoms, but again, that's only a temporary situation. Now, the medications can still help really well with the allergies, with the cold, with the flu, all that fun stuff. But as far as actually shrinking this disorder's length of time, so far there hasn't been anything. There are several pharmaceutical groups that are trying to do their best, and eventually, I assume eventually it's going to be fine. But right now, we don't have anything, and that's an important thing to note. So prevention is really the best option. So the question becomes, who is at risk for this? A lot of people are more at risk. Some people are more at risk than others. One of the big things is older people, your grandparents, for some people potentially their parents. My significant other is over 60, so you're having to help protect your grandparents, your grandma and your grandpa. Other people that are at risk are people that have what are called chronic health problems. That means that it's simply a health problem that lasts for a very, very long time and that are very serious. So people that might have diabetes, that's a very commonly known autoimmune system. Autoimmune means your body is fighting itself. So diabetics would be a little bit more at risk, potentially. Certainly people that have heart problems. I know at EA there was at least one person that did have a heart problem, had a couple of surgeries. So he would be at risk. People with severe lung problems might be at risk. For example, people that have asthma, like my friend in Colorado. People who have tuberculosis. I acquired tuberculosis when I was probably working at Grady, and so but I know we'll never get rid of it. So I will have a chronic disorder for the rest of my life. So I'm considered high risk because of tuberculosis. That's TB. People who are currently undergoing cancer treatments, they're at higher risk. There are several other ones on there, but these were the main ones to really focus on. If you are concerned about your risks and if you're likely to get it, it's a great idea to talk to your doctor, talk to a health professional who knows you, so that you can find out if you have to take even more risks than I'm already going to, more precautions than, not more risks. If you are more at risk, so you have to take more precautions, that would be very appropriate to do. Or you might even be able to ask your parents if you're not sure. It all depends on the individual. Anybody can get this. This is not a disorder that's just for people who are 60 plus. My husband's already been showing the signs of having it. I have two other friends that are positive, one of which is probably in his 40s, and another who's in her early 30s, who are already under this. I'm showing some of the signs, but again, we're not sure what it is, if I actually acquired it, or if it's allergies. But because anyone can get this, this isn't just a few groups of people. I wanted to give you a list of a few people that usually at least one person's going to have heard of. At least one of these people you will have heard of. Tom Hanks. So he's an actor. He plays, he played Forrest Gump, for example. That's a very commonly known character of his. His wife Rita also is tested positive. Prince Charles, who's heir to the British throne, he recently tested positive. I don't know if any of his other relatives did. Andy Cohen, I believe they said he was a host. He was like he's a host of something. Rudy Gobert, part of the NBA, so that's an athlete. Rand Paul's a politician. Harvey Weinstein, well, he is many things. He worked in the film industry, and now he's serving time for something else that he shouldn't have done. But several of these names are in the news on a fairly regular basis, especially Harvey. So I just wanted to give you a list of a few people. Surely at least one of these names sounds familiar. So how can you get this? you can get it by being coughed on or sneezed on. Even if you're right in front of them, you'll probably get more exposed. Whether you're further away, you still might get it. You can be near an infected person. The weird thing about this virus is that, I mean, you should have to show you can show no signs, absolutely. And it's just like it can practically just fall off you. They call it shedding a virus. It's incredible. No matter where you go, you probably should be wiping down almost anything because you don't know if somebody's infected or not. Some bodily fluids. So they recently found out that it's also being transmitted by poop, of all the things. So that's that really. I was just like, I don't want to know how you found that information out, but they did find out it is people are getting it from contact with poop. And as I mentioned, being in contact with something an infected person touched, and why you should try to wipe everything down, disinfect it if you can, do the best you can. Okay, so there are crazy things going out there right now, so I wanted to knock some of them in the bud right now. Eating Chinese food, probably not going to get you corona. That is apparently one of the first industries that got affected when it came out because people are scared and people don't always think, or they let their fear, rule them. But I don't think there has been a single case of anybody eating Chinese food, especially Chinese American food. I mean, it's one thing if, as I mentioned, that the bats it probably came in by eating bats. I don't think that many Chinese places in America are serving bats, so I think you're pretty safe. Being, another one, you're not going to get it by hanging around other Chinese people or other Asians. Realistically, unless they're infected, you're not going to be, and they don't have any more chances of being infected than anybody else. Unless they've had recent travel, I wouldn't be terribly worried about them, but I'm worried about anybody who's had recent travel. And I don't know why I'm even having to say this, but the beer that has unfortunately changed, shares a name with this, Corona's you're not gonna get it from the beer. Okay. So what do you do if you think you might have it or anything else? Fact one, start checking your temperature. That's the first thing I would do. And because most of these other things, the symptoms, that can be so much, that could be anything, but a fever is always important to pay attention to. So if you're over about 100 is when I would start keeping an eye on things and potentially worrying if I had it or not. If you think you have several of these other symptoms on the list I mentioned earlier, hey, stay home. First of all, stay home and contact your doctor. See what he or she has to say. If you can't get a hold of them, contact their nurse. And also make sure that they are aware if you know somebody who is being treated or assumed to be positive for COVID. If you are having to spend time at home, if you're mild, rest, drink your water. There is some weird information going out there on Facebook about drinking water every 15 minutes will prevent corona. That isn't true. It's not going to flush it into your stomach or anything else. That being said, it is important to stay hydrated. So do drink water. You don't have to drink it every 15 minutes, but drink water because it's good for you anyway. Eat healthy food if you got your fruits and vegetables, eat that. Try to avoid the junk food, but that's good practice regardless of if you're sick or not. Disinfect anything you're in contact with, especially if you think you might have it, or have somebody else eventually do that. Somebody needs to be cleaning up just to kill as many things as possible. These viruses can stay a lot, depending on the substance, can be around from up to several hours to up to several days. So it is seriously important to do what you can to kill as many of the viruses as possible. I think they said stainless steel, it can be around for like 2 or 3 days or something like that, which is slightly frightening. So when to call your hospital or call 911. If you're having problems breathing, please contact somebody. Contact your local ER. Contact potentially 911. If you notice that your lips are starting to turn blue and it's not from, say, something you ate, blueberries might turn your lips blue. Stuff with dye might turn your lips blue. If you haven't eaten anything that's kind of blue and your lips are still turning funny colors, or your fingertips are starting to turn funny colors that they shouldn't be, that's something to make note of. If you're having chest pain, because sometimes that means that sometimes it's not your chest, sometimes it's your lungs. If you're having chest pain, contact somebody. Please contact somebody. If you get sudden confusion or are around somebody who suddenly becomes very confused and they're not snapping out of it, call somebody. I mean, that's something you should always do. But between COVID-19 and the other various problems, and if EMS has to come, as somebody who has worked 911, we would rather come to something and it turns out to not be serious, than to have somebody potentially pass away because their person didn't think to call. So, or they delayed. Now, if you choose to go to the hospital and you have, say, a parent driving you, and you're not, because you choose to not go 911 or you're driving yourself or whatever, call the hospital before you get there, especially if you want to go to the ER. What they'll probably do, if assuming you're still at home and not already in the car, they might try to do what is called triage. Triage means that they try to see how serious you are, so that they can direct you to the most appropriate group. They might do that over the phone. They might say, come in. They might say, hey, as soon as you get here, you call us because we're coming out with a mask and gloves for you. So they might do that. That's how my doctor is currently running. If you have any symptoms at all, you are to call him, and one of his staff goes out with stuff for you. Now, as I talked about the face masks, we are on a huge shortage, so that means we don't have what we need. A lot of people have been going into hospitals and stealing them because their parents didn't teach them that stealing was bad. And people are also buying them up. Some of them are buying them up so they can sell to a hospital at a higher price. That's called price gouging, and that's illegal. But a lot of people are doing that. The irony here is that most people who are not medical people are not using them correctly anyway, or are wearing the wrong size, assuming they are using them. I'll share this in case you are given a set and told to wear it. Once on, don't take it off. Do not touch it unless you are going to take it off. Because now you are contaminating your fingers, you're contaminating everything else. Don't adjust it. Don't do anything. Disposables, the ones that people are trying to, especially buy up, really they should only be worn by non-medical people if you are sick and the doctor says so. We are in such a shortage that we need to save those to people who are sick so that they don't infect other people. We have taken these things because most of them are made in China, which is of course having issues right now. That we went from having an almost unlimited supply to being under what is called a ration. Ration means you only get a certain amount that has to last you for a certain amount of time. You are supposed to change these between patients if you are working in healthcare, and now people are having to reuse them. They might only get one an entire shift, to which a shift can be up to 24 hours long. If you're working EMS, it can be even longer. I'll tell you that I requested face masks because I'm at very high risk. My husband's at very high risk, and I am in a hotspot, where I do work in hotspots, and I was given 4 disposable masks for the entire pandemic, which is now expected to go on for a while. 4 disposable masks is the equivalent of for 4 patients. So I'm currently running unprotected because I don't have any masks, even though I've been constantly exposed to this disorder in people who are most likely positive. If you're going to wear a mask and you are not a healthcare provider, but you need to run out and try to do an errand, a lot of people are recommending the cloth masks, which that can be as simple as a little bit more tailored to your face than say what what you see in the Old West or a bank robber, but something that covers most of your face, that's actually a really good method to help non-medical people prevent getting sick, especially if you're practicing that social distancing, which I'll get to in a second, or a few seconds though. I know where that is in this slide, or this PowerPoint. If you are doing a big cloth mask covering your face, making sure there's no way for it to get in very deeply, and you're still practicing the 6 feet away, you'll be doing pretty well, especially if you're around sick people, because most of the small pieces of spit that are gonna fall down, they're not gonna get to you. Only the bigger ones will, which will be absorbed by the cloth. And because they're easy to take off and wash, it's actually a little bit better. These disposables are really designed for people who are right up in everybody's business. They are right up. They are designed for people who are taking care of sick people, because they're much finer, and they're much less likely to get stuff in. I felt like I needed to say this because there's a lot of people that are making it very difficult for me to stay healthy because of the mask situation. Several hospitals have lost thousands of boxes of masks, in a very short period of time. So it's been very scary. If you know of anybody who can sew, actually, some hospitals are actually trying to move to help extend the life of their disposable masks by putting a cloth mask over it. Okay, so gloves, they're also in a shortage. Not nearly as bad as the face masks, but I think we're just more prepared because we usually already go through a bazillion gloves a day. They're also being used incorrectly by non-medical people. You're supposed to change your gloves between tasks, all tasks. Basically, I sometimes will change my gloves a few different times, when I'm working with the same patient. just because that's how you're supposed to do. I've changed gloves 4 times on a patient before. It's just, but some people are taking their gloves and using them in the entire day. Not quite how you're supposed to work with it, because now you're just spreading the germs from one surface to another surface to another surface. And people are still touching their face with these gloves, which defeats the purpose. So please don't touch your face, even if you're wearing gloves. Okay. As I talked about your face, keep your hands and your cooties or whatever to yourself. We can pretend that we're back in elementary school and everybody has cooties, because right now this is the ultimate everybody has cooties game. Bacteria and viruses are everywhere. Please don't touch anybody unless you have to. Don't shake hands. I know this is kind of interesting for me because I've never been a handshaker, and like the first time I start to initiate handshaking, they're like, nope, can't do that because we're in a pandemic. So it's actually kind of interesting. So find a different way to greet your friends. Ideally, don't touch them. You know, my doctor did the elbow bump thing, which was really weird. But I don't know. I've stopped asking questions about that doctor. You know, don't fist bump because you're still transmitting bacteria and all sorts of other goofy stuff. You could try to wave at people. My personal favorite, which is a personal favorite because I'm a Trekkie and I find it hilarious, but some people are doing the Vulcan salute as a greeting. Hey, whatever works for you. You know, don't touch your eyes, your mouth, your nose. Don't touch anything up in your face. Just try to avoid it. Don't touch it more than necessary. The more you touch, the more likely it is the bacteria, the viruses and stuff, and all those germs that we're trying to get off you end up giving a free ride into your body. And that's what we don't want. If you are sick, you could try sneezing into your elbow, provided you're not sneezing into your hand, basically because we're trying to keep your hands as cootie free as possible. And you know, your elbow is like what, 11 inches away. You could also try to cough into a tissue and throw it out. That's another option. You know, anything possible to prevent the spread of those germs. So now we're going to play Jeopardy, and I'm just sure you're all absolutely thrilled. So Jeopardy time. Now here is the answer, and I'm going to show you some photos before I start the timer. But this item is the best way to stop the spread of COVID-19. Is it this one, which is a hand sanitizer, or is it this one, a bar of soap? All right. So what did you answer? Did you answer what is soap? If so, you're correct. So the thing is with the hand sanitizer is people are not using it correctly either. And I know that it's very easy to say, but how can you not use that correctly? The fact is that it was designed to be used in between patients when you don't have time to wash your hands. In this case, I think that doctors, nurses, you know, other members of you know, my team, probably including me, has probably set a bad example. Hand sanitizer is is designed to be used when you don't have the time. And in something serious, we're actually are supposed to stop and wash our hands. If you are a very sick person, you need to wash your hands. We're going into and out of an isolation tank, which is basically, you're thinking about really serious, highly contagious illnesses. We're washing our hands, but you guys don't notice that. You do notice that we do hit our hand sanitizers very frequently, because most of the times people are not infectious enough to warrant everything, but we are still washing our hands later. We just have to move very, very quickly. Nothing can beat hand washing for 20 seconds, except for possibly washing for even longer. As soon as we can, we go out and we wash our hands. Soap, water, basically the same thing that I'm going to be showing you in just a minute. So let's talk about hand washing. I love this thing. Quote the Raven, lather more. I couldn't resist. I'm sorry, Dr. Pickens. So the question is how long is 20 seconds when we do this? Because you're going to hear this a lot, and I'm going to repeat it again when I show you the video. It's long enough to sing Happy Birthday, but you have to sing it twice, because apparently it only lasts 10 seconds, unless you're a really, really super slow singer. The chorus from Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Chorus from Staying Alive, which incidentally is really great if you're ever learning CPR. Karma Chameleon, although a warning, if you do that, it'll probably get stuck in your head. You could even use the Final Jeopardy theme, but that's actually I think it was 32 seconds. So you could do that. And it's also long enough to, if you aren't a big music person, I'm not a big music person, to say the opening from Star Trek, either the original series or Next Gen, or the opening to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Assuming you do it at a normal pace, it's going to be 20 seconds or longer. Of course, if you want to do the theme tune afterwards, that's even better, but what do I know? Now, I didn't think I had to ever tell somebody how to wash their hands, but after watching a lot of y'all in the bathroom, especially the boys, you all know who you are, I apparently have to do a step-by-step on how to wash your hands. First, turn on the water. I think this is the only thing that has actually been consistent. People usually do turn on the water. Lather with soap. Any soap. I don't care what soap. If there is soap present, please use the soap. That can be liquid soap. That can be Ivory soap. That could be Irish Spring, Dial. I don't care. Try your best to find something that looks like soap. Lather with it as best as you can. Surprising amount of soaps don't lather, but do what you can. Do the front of your hands. I will watch you people do the front of your hands and not do anything else. Especially the boys. Wash the front of your hands. Wash the back of your hands. Do between your fingers. And if you can, do it under your nails. Works better if you have a little nail brush. My nail brush keeps disappearing. But if you are ever in a situation where you have a nail brush, that's a good option too. Okay, so something I didn't note in the other one as far as actual steps was turning off the faucet. Turn off the faucet. I'm hoping I didn't actually need to say that, but to turn off the faucet, I know a lot of places are basically moving to automatic offs. That's probably why I don't think about it. But yeah, turn off the faucet. So I did make a little video. Sorry, this is probably less than ideal quality. It took us a surprising amount of hours to get this filmed. We went through like 6 different attempts. A lot of then ended up with things breaking and having to redo it. Yeah, it was kind of ridiculous. So, first step is to turn on the water. And then you have to get your hands nice and wet. Now would be the time to take off the ring if you have one. How many times I'm doing this right now, I'm not going to bother. So next up, take your soap. It could be any soap you want. Lather up. You can use liquid soap, bar soap, whatever you have to have. Lather up what you can. A lot of people are, when they're doing their hand washing, will only basically do the front. And there's a whole other part of the hand that you need to get, and that would be the back. And in between. All that's important. Now, if you have a nail brush, that would be the perfect time to get underneath your nail. Most people do not have one on them, so you can technically just do it with other nails if necessary to try. Or you can keep your nails super short, that's another option too, obviously. And once you get that done, there you go. So there you go. That is hand washing, and I'm happy that finally worked out. Oh, first step is to turn on the water. Not sure what's going on with that. Okay. Well, now I've hopefully moved to the correct slide as opposed to restarting the video again. So there's a lot of discussion right now about something that they're calling social distancing, which to me really doesn't sound right. It's more like physical distancing, because socially, you can be in the same area, and certainly, you know, Zoom and Skype and stuff like that are places that you can go and talk to your friends, and there's always the phone. So social distancing I don't think is a great term, because you might be alone in a location, but you always have social outlets. Now, the concept of physical distancing, I think, is a better term. It basically just means that you're trying to keep yourself away from an area, from other people, like physically. This is being suggested, and in some places implemented, to help reduce the spread of contagion. Basically, they're saying stay about 6 feet apart. If you are with near a sick person who's like 6 feet apart or so, the further away you go, the less likely it is that they're going to get stuff on you. And, you know, sneeze, people who are sneezing, people who are coughing, most of those germs will fall away before they get to that 6 foot mark. So even under not less than ideal situations. So 6 feet is considered helpful. If you can go further, that's great, but this is what they're currently recommending. So the question is how long is 6 feet? So I know we have at least one person who's really into animals. So that's like a moose length or a llama length or something like that. One tall person. Dr. Pickens is rather tall. I think she said she was about 6 foot. I can't remember. So you can think of one Dr. Pickens for those who know her. Or you could also think of, a refrigerator height. A refrigerator height is actually just a little bit under 6 foot. It's like, I think it's like 5'10" or something like that. So a little bit bigger than a refrigerator. I basically think of it as how large is 6 foot? I think of it as one husband unit because my husband is over 6 foot tall. Not that I usually recommend people getting closer than 6 foot to me anyway, because I'm not a big social butterfly. But now it's about 6 foot, and I have to now tell them when 6 foot is when they're getting way too close. Okay, so there's another term that's being thrown around a lot. It's called quarantine, which is kind of a scary term. And basically, it's when you're basically being held in a spot, or in this case, we're asking people to self-quarantine, which means you put yourself in a little, like your house, and stay there. You also may hear something like shelter in place, which is basically stay in, in your little living area, your house or whatever, as much as possible, and only go out for basics, basic necessities. I'm very much an introvert, so it's very interesting hearing from my friends who are all like, oh, so our normal lifestyle is called quarantine. So I figured, since I know we have at least one worry that's going to be watching this video, there you go. Here's Baby Yoda making his comments about quarantine. And apparently, must be something in the water, because now everybody does want to go out because the government says don't go out. But, it's fairly accurate. I probably have gone out to Kroger more often in this in this quarantine than I have ever gone out before, and that just is because I'm having issues with groceries. But yeah, quarantine, it actually comes from an Italian phrase referring to 40, because that's how long it used to be a quarantine. You cannot nowadays have quarantines of any length. But this is actually how Italy attempted to slow down the spread of bubonic plague way back then. So as I said, it's basically staying in one location for a set period of time. The government is currently recommending at least 2 weeks. There is a question over whether it's going to be longer. And if you are sick, you may even be asked to quarantine in your room and basically only come out to use the restroom in order to, again, prevent the spread of contagion or germs. By doing this whole self-quarantine, trying to self-isolate, trying to keep away from everybody, it's going to help us. And you might have heard this claim that says flatten the curve. Basically, what that means is that they're trying to reduce the chances of a hospital getting overwhelmed by trying to reduce how many people are getting sick, at least getting sick at once. That's why they're recommending stuff like this. So I wanted to give a little bit of that more normal that medical jargon using more normal terms. How are you going to get help in the event of a quarantine? The fact is that you might need to make a plan with your parents or your social worker, your caseworker, whoever, as to how to set up this plan, how to make sure that you do get groceries in the event you can't go out. How do you get medication in the event that either you can't go out or the transportation's not available, and some errands are still going to unfortunately need to be run. And this can be done with a discussion with like you said, your friends, whatever. There will always be somebody to help you in this, and you just need to help figure out who is actually going to help you. Another important list of things you have besides, food, obviously, and stuff, is you might want to have the number for your doctor. You can put it on your refrigerator. The number for your caseworker, if you have one. Numbers for friends, for family. Numbers that you can reach out to if you're getting scared and you need to talk to someone. There was a group that I haven't even gotten the contact information from, but I've heard there's a group doing it. There was a group of psychologists and stuff that are currently out there that are basically manning the lines for people who are scared, and they're not charging. It's just somebody to talk to, and because this can be a unnerving time. But you also will hopefully have your friends and your family to talk to as well. You should always have that information. So in this period of quarantining and such, what happens if you actually have a job? The fact is that the government is recommending a lot of places be shut down temporarily. A lot of businesses are like, please either cut back your hours or do something in order to stop people from wanting to go out and potentially getting more and more people sick. Places like your grocery stores, your convenience stores, those places are pretty much remaining open. Your emergency workers, I don't think there's anybody here that's really an emergency worker or healthcare team, except for me. And there are a few others that you're going to be open regardless. If you have a job, contact your boss or whoever, your supervisor, and talk to them. Ask them if your job is remaining open right now. Ask them potentially what they're doing to help minimize the spread of germs. Some jobs are also going to only using the computer. My husband already works a remote job. A lot of my work is already remote, so that's not as much of a problem. A lot of other people, they don't have that option. Assuming your job is open and they still want you to come in, it's really important for you to be aware of if you are getting sick. Even though you might not have symptoms, you could still spread it, but we can't, quarantine the entire world, especially if you're in an essential business. If you are getting sick, however, call your boss and talk to them. Stay home. You're doing this to prevent getting other people sick. That is an incredibly, incredibly important thing for you to do. It's just, the best thing you can do for us and your healthcare team that's out there is to, if you're sick, don't spread it out. If you're spending a lot of this time in quarantine, there are things for you to do. A lot of people are not used to being home alone. I'm a homebody as much as I can, because I spend so much time out. As soon as I'm home, I don't want to do anything. But there are lots of things for you to do. You can go out. You can read. If you're a reader, I've got 6,000 books in my house. I'm going to do a lot of reading. If you're a writer, that's cool too. You can talk to your friends on Skype or Zoom. You can do email. You can text them if you got a phone that's compatible for that. If you like to go outside and work, on growing things, gardening is currently, because of issues with some of the supply chains to the grocery store, people going and gardening is becoming a huge thing now. It's been a long time since people have been planting victory gardens, but that's what they're doing. I've already had the pleasure of spending several hours in my garden. Blackberries, mint, potatoes, broccoli. I've got to still plant my carrots, to do something with my tomato plant, and my lavender. And I think I've got cauliflower too. So that's an option. You could also just go out and enjoy nature. Nobody's going to yell at you for going outside in your backyard. Nobody's going to yell at you for being in your front yard. There are some parks that are closed. Certainly a lot of dog parks are closed now. But just sitting outside and enjoying nature is still very much open. You can go play games. You can play board games with your family if they're here. There are a lot of online games you can play if that's more your thing. Apparently, Cards Against Humanity has just released an online version, apparently. I know Settlers of Catan has been online for years. If I wasn't doing this right now, I probably would be playing Star Trek Online, because that's my thing. You can do arts and crafts. You can, I'm going to be doing some of that later on today. Michael's, and the various other hobby stores for the most part are open. I don't know why, but they're still open for the moment. So that's a possibility. Another possibility that kind of falls under arts and crafts, but is also something very important, is cooking. I know you've got some potential chefs. You could also draw if that's your thing. I know we have at least one person who's a very talented drawer. You can work out, do some exercise. That's a possibility if that's your thing. More power to you. You can play music. You can either actually play music, as in just play listen to music all day. You can actually practice your guitar if that's your thing. A lot of places right now are offering free lessons for a whole lot of things. So, see Fender, who does guitar, they're offering free guitar lessons. I've actually been seeing a lot of free lessons all over the place, to be honest with you, including free therapy, free lessons, free skills, free origami, free just showing you all the different skills. It's actually been pretty amazing for those of us who are kind of nerdy and kind of like taking online classes. I have multiple classes I'm signing up for because because it's interesting to me. Other options, if you're not so much the playing music, either like physically playing music or taking classes, music classes type of person, you can also take virtual tours of museums. So many museums are offering stuff right now. It's incredible. If you are have more of a theatrical bent, so many places are putting up free plays that are on Broadway, off Broadway, for free, to keep people entertained. And it's been truly fascinating to watch people who often are trying to cut arts funding. What they're doing as soon as they're in quarantine, it's all art. Almost everything on here is some type of art related thing. Personally, I'm going to eventually watch some musicals, but I still have got about a bazillion classes that I want to take first. Okay, so let's see here. But I'm actually enjoying this time at home. Okay, another option that you can do when you're at home is you could also try to become an artist yourself. You can make a fun video about hand washing like these people did, and try to go viral. This is a hand washing video coming out of Vietnam. Sorry, that was so delightful that I basically am inflicting that on now almost everybody I'm around. So I hope you enjoyed that too.
cháy lên cùng giơ tay xoa 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 đều đừng nên cho tay lên mắt mũi miệng và hạn chế đi ra nơi đông người để lùi virus corona luôn nâng cao sức khỏe và vệ sinh không gian xung quanh mình cùng nâng cao ý thức của xã hội để lùi virus corona.
Okay, so I know I haven't covered everything there ever is to know about coronavirus. It can be a little bit challenging because I know this is actually going to be going towards people with a variety of needs. But I did want to let people know who are probably could be watching this at home with their parents who might have more questions, or maybe you have more questions too, I don't know, that there are other resources to learn more about this. SiriusXM, they are dedicating a channel, I believe it's on 121 right now, 24/7 coverage, and you don't even have to have a subscription to Sirius. You can use one of their any new radio, any old radio that they have, inactive radios that can pick them up. They are also doing it on their app as well as on their website. So they're doing free 24/7 coverage. You probably don't need free 24/7 coverage, but it's there. It's being done through the same group of people that does like Dr. Radio, or at least that's what I am told. I like Dr. Radio, but I know not everybody does. Other options to learn more are, of course, if you're in the U.S., the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, based out of Atlanta. They're trying to keep us all up to date on what is going on. Another good resource is the World Health Organization. They're doing everything they can. Everybody's doing everything they can to keep the world up to date on what is going on and best practices to, help, as they say, flatten the curve and help keep everybody safe as best as they can. Everybody's at risk, and we're just trying to make sure that good information is going out so that people don't overreact or underreact. They react just the amount that they're supposed to do. And for people who are in in Eagle Academy who asked me to do this video. Dr. Pickens, of course, has my contact information, all of my contact information. And if parents are sitting here watching this and they have more questions, Dr. Pickens, you have my full permission to even give them my cell if needed to help answer their own questions. So I wanted to conclude this presentation by asking y'all to help us, medical people, help you. Please stay home. Please follow the guidelines as best as you can so that we can, end this ridiculousness, and, hopefully kill off this virus before more people, that we love pass away. I've already have multiple friends that have gotten it. I'm just lucky that I haven't lost anybody yet. But this is an active case. This is an active situation, especially if you're in Georgia. We're one of the top states that are growing rapidly. And it's a somewhat scary time to be a healthcare provider right now. So again, please help us, help you. Please do what you can to stay home. Thank you, and thank you, Dr. Pickens, for having me.